If you want to buy booze in the great state of Ohio, not beer and wine, but booze, anything more than 42 proof, you have to buy it from a state liquor store. Lots of different states do it this way for a lot of different reasons. But in Ohio last year, that arrangement brought in a profit for the state of about $229 million, a record. Ohioans are drinking more than ever. And that has been great for the state's bottom line, $229 million from selling booze in Ohio. Bottoms up, Buckeyes. It's sort of patriotic. But because Ohio is broke, because Ohio has a big budget deficit, like lots of states, the new Republican governor of Ohio, former Fox News celebrity John Kasich, has apparently decided to give away that funding stream. Wait, what? Yes, this is the sort of thing that's happening all around the country right now. This is sort of like finding out that your family finances are in trouble, and so you then go to your boss and ask your boss to please lower your salary. Ohio right now makes nearly $230 million a year from state-run liquor stores. But Governor Kasich, pleading poverty, says the state should take that money and instead give it away to businesses. I feel like the politics around what's going on with Republicans in the states right now is being conducted in English and reported in Esperanto. I do not understand why the national reporting on this continues to be so back-asswards. Governors like Scott Walker in Wisconsin, John Kasich in Ohio, Rick Snyder in Michigan, all of these Republican governors and the legislatures there keep pleading poverty and telling everybody how broke their states are, right? But then their proposed solutions to this problem of how broke they are is to make their state more broke, to make their budgets worse. Think about this for a second. For all of Ohio's budget troubles, one bright spot is that Ohio had an income stream of nearly $230 million last year from booze to help pay for the state's needs. Governor Kasich is trying to get rid of that bright spot. Governor Kasich is trying to get rid of that black ink in the state budget and instead give it away. This does not make Ohio's budget problems better. This makes Ohio's budget problems worse. This is not a means of closing the budget gap. This is a means of taking a hole that exists in the budget gap and blasting it into an expanse in the budget. Anybody who reports that Republican governors and legislatures are taking drastic measures to close their state's budget gaps is not reporting this truthfully. In New Jersey, where the governor's cuts to education from last year were just ruled unconstitutional today, in New Jersey, the justification for those cuts was, of course, that New Jersey's broke, right? What does Governor Christie want to do to fix that problem of New Jersey being broke? He wants the state to spend $200 million a year that it is not spending already to cut taxes on estates and corporations. In Arizona, where Governor Jan Brewer has said the state is so broke that people on Medicaid who are on the transplant list have to die because the state can't afford their organs anymore, despite arguing that her state is that broke, Governor Brewer thinks the state of Arizona can somehow afford to spend $538 million over the next 6 years on tax cuts, with fully half of that money from totally broke Arizona being spent on corporate tax cuts. For all of the pleading poverty these governors and Republican legislatures are doing, they have somehow found a lot of money in these state budgets to spend on some really specific beneficiaries. Again, I don't know why it is not being reported this way. Maybe it is because the word profligate is hard to pronounce and hard to spell. Honestly, I do not know. Joining us now is Washington Post writer, Newsweek columnist, and MSNBC contributor, and a man who can both spell and pronounce profligate, Mr. Ezra Klein. Ezra, thank you for being here.
I'm glad to be here, but not after a couple visits to the Ohio liquor stores.
Yeah, no, I can't do profligate backwards or while walking a very narrow line. Why is it a secret that giant multi-million-dollar tax cuts make budgets worse and not better? Why is that a national secret in 2011?
It is a triumph of will over numbers. There is, I think you can say there are two things going on here. One, I think there is a longstanding assumption in the press corps that the Republicans care about deficits more than the Democrats do. This, I think, has to do with the fact that Republicans use the word deficit more than Democrats do. It has not, however, been dented by the fact that Democrats in recent years under Clinton have managed to actually balance a budget, while Republicans in recent years under George W. Bush have managed to explode one. So that, I think, is one bucket of it. The other is that every time you ask Republicans Republicans about it, they say, wait for us. They say, we're bringing out our budget in a couple months. Then we will show you how we'll balance everything. Then we'll show you how we'll deal with entitlements. And so there's been a bit of a wait and see approach. But as you say, on the state level, where the budgets are already coming out, we have waited and we are seeing, and they do not look good. They look like an enormous amount of tax cuts that are being paid for on the backs of, in many cases, the poor. What
is interesting, too, is that Republicans also get credit for being super anti-tax. But in many of these Republican states that are giving away these huge budget-busting tax cuts to corporations and to the wealthy, for example, with the state taxes, we are also seeing Republican legislatures and Republican governors proposing raising taxes on the poor. In Georgia, they are proposing raising taxes on blind people. In Michigan, they are raising taxes specifically on the elderly and the poorest people in the states. But yet they are still getting credit for being anti-tax zealots. We have class-based distinctions in the way we understand the word tax, maybe?
Well, this goes to a very serious part of the Republican economic philosophy right now, which is that what you want to do to get economies back on track is you want to lower taxes on, quote-unquote, the most productive members of society. Not the people who spend money, which is what Democrats want to do. They figure you give a tax cut to somebody who needs to make ends meet, he goes out, he pays his rent, his landlord has money. No, they want to give it to people who have a lot of money under the theory that if you give them more of an incentive to work, because now they'll be able to make even more money than they're already making, they will sort of work their magic on the economy and the economy will rebound. I don't think the data really bears this out, but it's an important distinction. They're not just for low taxes. They are specifically for low taxes on the rich under sort of a Randian philosophy that the rich are the ones who really drive economic growth in this country.
Haven't we already seen a bit of experimentation with that as corporate profits have rebounded so much in the last couple of years? I mean, corporate profits have been doing great, and yet what corporations have been doing with that profit is sitting on it. They've not been plowing it back into the kind of investment that would create jobs. Isn't that right?
I wouldn't say this has been a theory very amenable to evidence. In the Bush years, of course, we lowered taxes on the rich dramatically, and I don't think anybody looks back at the aughts and says they were a great time. But as you say, there's a shifting rationale here. We go from it's all about deficits, and then they come in and they want to extend the Bush tax cuts at a cost of $4 trillion, and then it's all about reducing uncertainty, and sort of now we're here. Bigger deficits, a lot of uncertainty, and an unclear economic philosophy.
Washington Post writer, Newsweek columnist, MSNBC contributor, and profligacy pronouncer. Ezra Klein, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Coming up next, the story of mistakes made at an American nuclear plant that are so outrageous, there is no shorthand Twitter expression strong enough to capture the appropriate reaction with or without the hash mark. That's next.